Greetings, fish fans and fanatics. Noah with Fond of Fish. Figured this would be as good of an opportunity as any to do a apartment tour, or at least a fish tank tour. See, I have to do a water change on this tank. Got a little layer on the top going on. This is Ernest. He's a Cambodian crowntail. He's preoccupied with whatever is going on right now. I've got a bunch of plants in here, not a bunch, just a few easy varieties, but for me it's a bunch. I'm just getting into live plants. Probably about a month ago is when I started. And I'm just still a live plant noob, but I'm getting better at it. Finally got this tank's parameters in check, and it's actually been up the longest of all my aquariums. Just a regular 10-gallon glass aquarium with a 15-watt T8. Originally I had the LED hood that came with this aquarium, but I didn't feel as though it was strong enough to grow plants efficiently, and that it just wouldn't suffice. And so far I've proved myself correct. This has been a much better light setup than the previous one. So he's got a 50-watt Tetra preset heater out back in there, you can see, with a black plastic background on this tank, some duckweed, some sword, some Anubis, bacopa, and the fern. Coming over here, we've got Rufus. If he decides he wants to come out. Well, he's back there, hanging out, doing whatever it is he does. This is just a 5-gallon. I'm actually waiting on the heaters to come in the mail. I have three 25-watt heaters. One for each of these tanks, definitely. These tanks so far have not been heated the whole time I've had them set up. They've been set up actually quite a while, but as you can see, they don't stay very consistently warm. This one right now is at 72, and it's just too cool for them to do well. So I do have three Aquaneat heaters coming, and they should be delivered actually tomorrow. I just recently did a video actually about the sponge filters. These filters will now have to cycle. I'm sure there is some bacteria living in the substrate. These tanks have been up for about, I want to say, 5 months or so, but probably not enough to help. So that's definitely going to be my next chore, is making sure that I keep up on the maintenance to keep all of those numbers in check. Coming over here, we've got Bear. He's a veil-tail male. Seems a bit cold, so definitely am eagerly anticipating those heaters. I've got this Fluval Spec 5 that I picked up used for $20. And it did come with the light on the top, the fixture, but it's missing the cord. And I think what I'm going to do is, on eBay they sell the LED strips with the transformer and remote and IR receiver, and you can change the colors, and it's got this little control module, and they're cheap. They're like $10, $14, whatever. I'm going to try that and just double stick tape the LED strips to this. Now this works because I did test it on my other Fluval. I used a transformer from that one, but I never was a big fan of this kind of janky switch, and this isn't very well sealed, not like the new gen Fluval. So I'm just going to kind of DIY something together for that. And I will be making a video soon on homemade internal corner filters. I'm just going to use some biomedia, some polyfloss, and then a sponge with an intake tube going down to the bottom. And I'm going to use those in a couple of my tanks, I think, as well, just to try them out. My apartment's kind of messy, so I apologize in advance. Here is the other fluval. I need to get a heater in that one. I did have a preset Tetra heater, but I put it in another tank. Here's a couple tanks that are just sitting idle. I actually use these to dump spent aquarium water into when I do water changes, and then from here I scoop them out and bring the pails to the toilet. But I do have two 5-gallon wastewater buckets that I also use. But I found that I end up using these tanks for that sole purpose alone. And it kind of bums me out because there's nothing wrong with them and they're in good shape. And I could be using them, but I don't really have the room, if you couldn't tell. My apartment is like, I don't know, it's pretty small. It's like 600 and something square feet. So basically every space that I have is used up. And right now, most of it is for fish tanks. So here I have a tank with some plants in it. This is kind of where I keep the plants for a while, let them grow, you know, wait to see if there's any snails on there. And that just has a deep blue professional sponge filter. Then this one, the filter is shut off and it's just kind of sitting there. I think I'm going to use this as a quarantine tank, or I don't know yet. That is gravel that I picked up from the bank of a river that I live near. So it's kind of neat. It kind of adds a natural escape, and a rock from the river as well. Here is the 20-gallon that I think I quickly showed in the previous video. I had an electrical mishap where I tripped my breaker and reset it and still had no power to half of the apartment, and it ended up being that I had blown a fuse on my main box way down in the basement. Didn't have power to half of my apartment for a couple days, so I ended up having to move my Danios. I have some long fin zebras and I had to take them out and put them in another tank for a while, just because I didn't have power to this outlet. And I still need to fix my cords and everything. It's still kind of jank. I have a 20 long here with artificial plants. Don't know what I'm going to put in that tank yet. That's still cycling. It's almost done. I cycled that one the old school way, the hard and tedious way, with just household ammonia. So it's been sitting for 3 or 4 weeks now. I'd have to look back at my log, but it probably will be another at least 2 or 3 weeks before I feel as though it's, you know, properly cycled and I'm comfortable with it. Here is a 10-gallon tank that I have with my pea puffers and a few female betta babies. They're actually doing quite well all together. I didn't know if they would or not, but they all get along, which is surprising. The pea puffers, I think, are hiding. You can see a couple of them back there. Anyway, there's those guys. And I have to maintain this tank, I think, the most out of all of them. I know pea puffers are sensitive to fluctuations, and so I am pretty OCD about checking the levels of this tank pretty much more than any other tank, especially since it's so small and you have to be on it constantly. Let's see, I've got some filters that I'm not using in here with some dirty aquarium water. I'm just trying to keep the bacteria alive for another day or so. Here we've got 2 quarantine tanks Those are 10 gallons. Here's Bonnie and Clyde. We've got the Blackmore. And then the Fancy. They're constantly hungry. I thought about switching to live plants in this tank too, but I don't know yet. Anyway, there they are. They're happy and content. Here is my female betta sorority tank. I've actually had a lot of luck with this tank so far. There's a ton of bettas in here, but they won't always come up at the same time. Sometimes they commune together, but other times it's kind of hard to get them in a shot. But there's some platies in here, some baby betta females, some rasboras, an albino cory cat, some danios, and I think I had, in my first video ever on my channel, I had done an unboxing of the Aquarium Pro 75, and I like it so far. It's actually done really well. It does 400 gallons an hour, which is just perfect for this tank. It keeps it really clean. Of course, I'm pretty meticulous about water changes and maintenance, but on all these tanks it does get tiring at times, but you gotta do it. You gotta pay to play. This is one of my most favorite bettas. She's a really unique color. There's a bunch in there. I'm surprised they all came to the same area at the same time. They don't always do that. Moving on, here is my 55 with 2 filament barbs. These guys are neat. They're in here alone because I did have some danios in here, and I think they ate one. Although I can't be sure, but I never found that fish. Here's the 37 tall. I'm doing a fishless cycle in this tank, and so that will be quite a while longer. It's only been set up for maybe a week. Here's my bow front tank. There's Gary the gourami. He's hanging out. Got some platies and some danios in there as well. And yeah, those are all the tanks. I'd like to start getting into freshwater, rather saltwater, sorry, but I don't know if I have the space for an RODI. I suppose I could fit it under my sink. In the bathroom, maybe in the kitchen, who knows. But I do want to get into saltwater and do a reef tank. I know that the bigger the tank, the better, especially for beginners. Well, those are my current tanks. Thanks for watching, as always. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below.